Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is Muhammad Farid Amirul bin Jasmani. My matches number is 277559. Today I will explain about process involved in construction technology subjects. Okay, first we will talk about topic to discuss. So first is project life cycle, second is activities involved during construction projects, third is key players, fourth is project planning and controlling, and last successful constructions. So next we will see a video about project life cycles.
This nugget, focused on the project lifecycle, explains the relationship between project management, what we're going to do as project managers to ensure our project delivers on time, on budget to customer satisfaction, and actual project delivery, the detailed tasks that our team are going to undertake to produce the actual project results. No project is complete without both. We need project management to again ensure that the project is on time, on budget, to specification, and we need project delivery, the actual execution, the actual delivery of the project steps itself. In terms of order of magnitude, there will be far more effort placed into the project delivery component of our project. This is where the entire team works. Project management is the oversight that we, the project managers, and our project team leaders will do to ensure that the project is delivering on time. This relationship between the project management processes and the project processes is very important for you to understand. The project processes, the analysis, the design, the development, the implementation are the actual activities, the steps that your project team is going to undertake to ensure that the project delivers the expected results. These are the project processes. The PM processes are the enveloping processes that are going to ensure we understand what it takes to do the analysis, the design, the development, the implementation. The PM processes are going to ensure that we have the management infrastructure in place to ensure that the analysis, the design, the development, the implementation are in fact on time, on budget, and in fact delivering what it is we intended to deliver. So what are the PM processes? We have a PM process for initiating. Initiating is determining, is this project a valid project? Does this project make sense? Should we undertake this project? Once we do the initial validation, we will then go into the detailed project management planning process. In the planning process, we will go through and we will develop the detailed project plan, the work breakdown structure, the project schedule, the project budget that will define all of the steps that are required to do the analysis, the design, the development, and the implementation. So in other words, planning produces the plan that defines how analysis, design, development, and implementation will be done. So the first two steps of our PM process happen before the team even joins the project. The first two steps of our PM process are PM steps only, and therefore happen prior to the actual execution of our project. Then we lead into actual execution. Executing the project. Executing the project is where the team, not the project management team, but the actual project delivery team will conduct the analysis, do the design, do the development, and do the implementation. So execution is the actual delivery of the project. This is where the majority of the work in your project is done. This is where the most hours, this is where the most expenses for your project are incurred during execution. Execution is primarily a project team member function in the project. The project management functions are focused on the monitoring and the control. The monitoring and control is where you, the project manager, and your project management team will ensure that we are in fact on time. that we are in fact on budget, that we are truly delivering what it is the project was initiated to deliver, that we are truly that we are truly delivering on the project that was defined in the planning process. And then finally, our last project management process is closing. Gaining final acceptance of our project, ensuring that the project successfully concludes. I've redrawn this slide to try to put the relationship between the PM processes and the project processes in better perspective. If you look at it from the total lifecycle view, the total lifecycle view begins with initiating, validating that the project makes sense, moving into planning, where you develop the detailed plan, the schedule, the budget for the project itself, and in the planning process you identify the tasks required to complete analysis, design, development, and implementation. Then you lead into project delivery, where you lead into the project management process for executing, which is where the actual work for the project is done, and then finally into closing, where the project is completed, final acceptance is given by the business unit. Overriding all of that, monitoring and controlling all of that, is the PM process for monitoring control. So monitoring control begins when the project is actually initiated, so that we're ensuring the planning process itself is on track and delivering what is expected. As well, monitoring and control is active throughout the entire project delivery process, where each and every team member is responsible for contributing their piece of the information, their project status, their progress reports, into the monitoring and control process, so that the project management team can assess how well the project is doing, so that the project team can validate that the project is in fact on track and delivering to expectations. The PMBOK guide deliberately refers to the project management components, initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling, and closing, as process groups, not life cycle activities. Why? Because these process groups, initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling, and closing, can happen once per project or once per phase of a project. So if you're dealing with a very large, complex project, where each phase of your project life cycle, analysis, design, development, etc., are very large, many months long, it's quite likely that you will be doing an initiating phase for the analysis, or initiating process for the analysis phase, a planning process for the analysis phase, separate executing, monitoring, and controlling for the analysis phase, and then you will restart the entire process for the design stage. So you will reinitiate the project at the beginning of the design. You will reassess the feasibility of the project based on the new information that you have at the end of analysis. How large, how complex is the project going to be? Is the cost-benefit statement for the project still intact? Does it make sense to proceed with the project knowing what we learned from analysis? Assuming the answer is yes, that the initiating phase still makes sense, you would go through and develop a detailed plan for the design stage. And then you would execute and monitor the design stage, and then finally close out the design stage saying, design is now done. It's time to move on to the next stage of the project, which would be development. And again, you would redo the initiation in development, validate based on the new information that you have, the new focus for the project. Does the project still make sense? And again, assuming it is yes, you will develop a detailed plan for development, execute, monitor, and control the development stage for your project, and then close. So it's very important that you not confuse the project management process groups, the project management process steps, the project management activities that you as a project manager must undertake to ensure your project is going to be successfully planned and managed, with the actual project delivery life cycle. Because yes, for small, simple projects, you may only go through initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling once for the project, or for larger, more complex projects, it's very likely, virtually mandatory, that you will go through initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, and closing for each stage of the project. Separate set of project management process groups for analysis, a separate set of project management process groups for design, and
Okay, next is activities involved during construction projects. First is excavation, second is marking and grading, and third is constructing, fourth is brick masonry, fifth is electrical, sixth is plumbing, seventh is roof laying, eighth is welding, and lastly is finishings. So let's see a video about the activities involved during construction projects.
For this module, I will be explaining to you the types of construction activities relationship that we might face in any construction project that we deal with or work at. If you remember, in other module that focusing on the activity on node, we highlighted that activity on node showing a graphical tool that shows the project's activities as rectangles or squares joined by arrows, including the relationship and the dependency between these activities, as we can see here. So from that side, we mentioned that a node network diagram uses 4 types of construction activities relationship: from finish to start, from start to start, from finish to finish, and start to finish, or a multiple relationship. So what we discussed until today, and most of the examples we gave, was mostly focused on a situation in which the end of an activity is a necessary condition to begin a successor. For example, the end of activity B is necessary to begin activity D or F or S. On another word, let's say activity E will not start until activity C finishes. This kind of relationship called the finish to start relationship. And this also refers to as the traditional relationship. In matter of fact, most schedulers, they do prefer to only use this relationship when building their schedule. So before I go deeper and dig deeper on the types of the relationships, I want to highlight something what we call the key. So for example, we have a construction activity of pouring a concrete. As we can see here, we explain it as a rectangle shape. You will notice in your schedule, and sometimes from softwares, they develop the activity with something, not just the name of the activity or the description of the activity, but also more numbers in the rectangle that highlight more information about that specific activity. And before you read your schedule, you look for that key to highlight what are these numbers. So for example, I highlighted a quick example for you. If we have a pouring concrete activity, the description, what we usually put here is the name or the describing of that activity. So that in this case will be pouring concrete. Activity ID, it's basically a number or that activity number in the list of activities you have in your project. And we covered that in the course, the previous course on project initiation and planning. That refers what we mean by the codes. And then another number could be referring to the duration of that specific activity, which could be in days, in weeks, in months. And then these 4 I highlighted here, just I'm gonna go with them very quickly. One is the ES, refers to the early start of that activity. When that activity can start, the earliest possible time it will start. The same thing goes to EF, which is when that activity, the early finish time for that activity. The difference between the early start and the early finish, it always has to be the duration of that activity. LS, on the other hand, refers to the late start. What's the latest time that activity can start? And sometimes we mention that, or we need that number on what's the latest time an activity can start without affecting the project end date by any chance. This we will be talking about it in much more details for other modules later on how to calculate all these numbers and why they are important. Last but not least, we can have something called LF, for example, which is the late finish. What's the latest time the activity can finish without affecting the end date of the project to be shifted? Sometimes you might find more information below this rectangle, another maybe small 2 rectangles or 3 highlighting the type of floats, which we will also be discussing in a separate module in this course. So I just want
So the next is key player. So I will explain about the content of key player. First we have owner of the projects. So the second is designer or estimator. Third is architect or we call planner. And fourth is CNS engineers. Fifth is mechanical and electrical system engineers, because the project we have electrical parts. And the last is quantity surveyor. Okay, so the last topic is project planning and controlling. So what is project planning and controlling? Project planning and controlling is the approaches and technique used to plan and close a project. The scheduling technique is an appropriate presentation of the outputs, the management of risk in the planning, execution and evaluation of projects, and the practice and data used to rigorous monitoring to enable proactive control of the projects. So there is a meaning of project planning and controlling. So that's all from me. Thank you and have a nice day.